Welcome to episode 4 of the Menopause Unplugged podcast. I'm joined in the studio today with the lovely Maureen. How you doing, Maureen? Okay?
I'm doing okay, thanks.
Great. So Maureen, you reached out to me because you are perimenopausal, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you notice then that you were perimenopausal?
So a few years ago, so probably when I was about 38, 39, I would say, we had decided at that point that it was time to maybe try and have another baby. So I've got two kids. Luckily, I've got two kids that are sort of in their teens. And we just got to that point where it was always something you kind of wanted to do, but never really, the house hadn't been right or we hadn't had enough money and things like that. So we just got to that point. We thought, stop contraception, things like that. And I knew obviously I was a wee bit older, but I was in my sort of, as I say, very late 30s. Still didn't seem that unreasonable to be doing it at that point. And I knew it was going to take a wee bit longer as well, but things went on and nothing was really happening. So I kind of went down the route of getting like the wee ovulation test kit thing that you can get
Uh-huh.
on a stick. So I was doing that, and it was never really coming up with the sort of peak that you're meant to get when you ovulate. I'd never really actually thought anything about that at the time, but then started to miss periods. And obviously, if you're trying for a baby, the first thing you think is, there we go, that's us. But I was doing sort of pregnancy tests, they were all come back negative.
Yeah.
And eventually, I think I went to the doctor. I think I'm going to say maybe, don't know, a while into it anyway. So possibly I was still 39, maybe 40, and just kind of said, look, I'm sort of explained the circumstances, missing periods, doing pregnancy tests, nothing's happening.
Yeah.
And they just sort of did a pregnancy test at that point and went, yeah, you're definitely not pregnant. And that's sort of it, I think. And it maybe is a bit of sort of selective memory. They possibly did say to me at that point, come back if there's any more problems or whatever. But for whatever reason, I never really followed it up.
Mm-hmm.
And it genuinely never occurred to me at that point what was going on. And I think it was only when I got the first hot flush at that point I had the kind of light bulb moment, and I was just like, my God, I can't believe it never even really occurred to me that this what was happening. So I think I was probably 40-ish, I'm going to say. And then that was it, the hot flushes started, and I think I was averaging maybe a period once every 2 months, maybe a bit fewer than that, started to kind of tail off. And obviously at that point I just started Googling and I was like, right, okay, this is what's happening, I suppose.
Yeah. And how did that feel? Like obviously experiencing that hot flash all of a sudden? Was it?
As I say, it was just a total light bulb moment. It was kind of relief in a way, because I had, obviously, if you're sort of skipping periods and there's no other real explanation for it, your mind it does kind of start to wander, and your fingers kind of start to wander into Googling stuff as well, and you're sort of like, what's happening? Is one of my ovaries went kaput and things like that, and you do start to worry about other stuff as well. So yeah, do you know, it was actually more of a relief than anything that I finally kind of knew this is what's causing all this.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Okay, so apart from hot flushes, what else have you been experiencing then, symptom wise?
Do you know, I think I've probably been relatively lucky in that I've not had a huge amount of symptoms beyond that. Hot flushes have been fun, and plentiful. Probably, well, definitely a bit of weight gain, to be honest with you. I've always, probably like a lot of people, my weight kind of fluctuates sort of up and down between a stone either way, but I am very much stuck at the heavier end of that, and it is proven incredibly difficult to shift.
Yes.
Um, Other than that, I don't really think I've had, well, possibly a bit more hair than I would really want to be dealing with, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, probably not so much. I know there's things like anxiety and stuff like that, and it's kind of difficult to say whether I've always been a bit like that, to be honest with you. So it's difficult to say whether that's got worse or whether it's down to that. Obviously, there's other things like the way your job and things like that goes. So I've, as I say, probably not so much so far of the other symptoms. So I'm hoping that stays the same, but I suppose we'll just need to wait and see.
Yes, because really with symptoms they can come on at any time, change month.
Well, yeah.
You could have a sprint of, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, and then all of a sudden it all changes again, and you're back to that explorative, investigative stage again of
Yeah.
everything. But suppose the main thing to keep looking out for there is your period changes, because you'll know then when you'll transition from perimenopause into
Hmm.
the menopause, which is obviously a day, to postmenopause,
Yeah.
and then that's when you'll know the biggest shift, I think. Great. So, were there any particular challenges then you think that you faced that you had to overcome when you're going through?
Um, Again, things have been relatively straightforward so far. I suppose one of the biggest wins is kind of realizing that you're not going to have any more kids, which
Yeah.
is obviously disappointing. But again, I've got 2 kids and I didn't really have any problems having them, so I can't really moan too much, to be honest with you. But yeah, that was sort of disappointing, I think, when the realization hit. Um, Other than that, again, no, it's not been too challenging so far. Again, the weight gain is just one of these things. I suppose I was probably expecting that to hit middle age anyway. So um, other than those, yeah, the hot flushes, as I say, that's entertaining, particularly at night. Um, and trying to get a good night's sleep can be probably a bit more difficult, I think, than it used to be. Again, probably for a variety of reasons, having 2 quilts has helped massively, I've found, so that you can sort of wrap yourself up or kick the quilt off as needed several times a night. Um, but that's probably I suppose the only other thing that I can think of is a lot of this was happening during COVID,
Oh, I see.
and it it means probably that, well, I've not taken any treatments or anything like that. I've not like explored HRT, and beyond that sort of trip to the doctor to kind of investigate the periods. I've not really spoken to any health professionals. I think I was in for a smear or something like that, and I'd said to the nurse at the time, I think I was maybe like 41 or something,
Hmm.
and I'd said to them, I'm pretty sure I'm perimenopausal. Um, just sort of explained, and I was just, obviously I wasn't there for that, but I was just kind of not even really looking for a bit of advice, but just sort of maybe more reassurance or whatever. And I was just sort of asking, is there anything that I should be doing? Do I need to go to the doctor or anything? And she was just basically, what age are you? No, not really, unless you're having sort of difficulty, then there's not really anything that you need to do. But I think if it hadn't been during COVID and lockdowns and things like that, then I maybe would have made more of an effort to go and speak to someone about it, even if I wasn't really wanting to take any treatment or anything.
Yeah.
Um, so I suppose that's probably been the only other thing I can think of.
Okay. Well, we would advise, obviously, if your symptoms do get a bit more severe and you do need help, then yes, then
Yeah.
speak to your doctor. So I know, obviously, you kind of all this all kind of came out around the time of you trying for baby number 3. So
Hmm.
how did the realization then affect your personal relationships, that you were, you know, now going through this change? You weren't going to have any more kids. How did that affect you and your partner?
Well, he was disappointed as well, obviously. I think we'd both been kind of quite keen, but I think he was also a bit surprised. I think it was definitely something that he was thinking we wouldn't have been expecting for a few years. I think he was sort of very much under the impression this is something that will hit you in your 50s or something like that. So yeah, probably more surprise than anything else. But no, there's not really been any other issues other than that. As I say, a bit of disappointment, but we did get to the point as we got on. He's like a couple of years older than me, so sort of mid to late 40s, and we were getting to the point where we were like, well, do you know what, maybe maybe it was a bit late on. Now that we think about it, that's, you get used to having a reasonably good night's sleep and you're not up early in the morning and going back to nurseries and things like that. So I think we just decided that's the way it was meant to be honest with you. So, but we've not, well, obviously, other than the need for the two quilts at night, I don't think there's really been any other issues that I can think of.
And he's been quite supportive through that then.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no real concerns. I mean, my kids think it's hilarious, to be honest with you. They just think it's really funny, and they can actually spot me from across the room when you get a hot flush, and all of a sudden you're sitting sort of fanning your face and it's gone red and things like that. But yeah, other than the sort of mild mocking, it's not been too bad, I have to say.
Brilliant. So, have you made any significant lifestyle changes then throughout this realization that you are now in perimenopause?
Um, Probably not, to be honest. Well, I suppose the only thing is I'm kind of conscious for doing, as I say, various bits of googling and things like that. That because it has started maybe a wee bit younger,
Hmm.
and I've not went down the route of HRT, and I'm not saying that I'm not going to do that. As I say, it's not been too difficult for me so far. That might well change, but because I've not done that, I'm kind of conscious that osteoporosis and things like that could be a bit of a danger later on. So um, I'm kind of trying to do weights and things like that. I'm saying that as someone who's not been in the gym for like 3 weeks or something like that. So it is trying doing a lot of heavy lifting there, but it is something that I'm aware of. So I do kind of try and factor that in. So if I'm trying to do a bit more exercise, just in terms of sort of trying to lose a bit of weight anyway, I do make quite a bit of effort to try and do more weights and things like that. So that's probably about the only one that I can think of that I've kind of consciously changed.
Yeah, and of course, with along with lifting weights and exercising, it goes hand with your nutrition, doesn't it? Like you automatically end up eating better
Yeah,
because just because you're making those changes. So that's really
yeah,
that all supports your symptoms as well. Making those changes because when we're going through significant like hormone changes, our body's just looking for everything to be, firing on all cylinders, to kind of help manage it itself, like self-regulation. So it's really, really good. Um, is there anything at all that you wish you had known before entering the menopause? Like, was it spoken about in your?
um, it's obviously something that I was aware of. Like, I remember my mum going through the menopause, and she'd always said that she was quite young when it happened to her, but I think she was sort of mid 40s. And I think she'd quite a tough time of it, to be honest with you. So that this was obviously a while back when maybe HRT was relatively new, and I think it was still a bit of a fight to maybe go to the doctor and maybe get things like that. So she struggled a lot more, to be honest with you. I think her symptoms were quite difficult. So it was something that I was aware of. I think I just, as I say, I didn't realise that it was something that would happen this early. Even when I was sort of trying to do a bit of research and things like that, everything was sort of saying mid to late 40s. It can happen earlier than that, but that's sort of very much the exception. And I think I'd said to you, Nikki, that from reading one of your articles, it was sort of saying that that's not really the case. Early 40s is really quite normal. So I think that's definitely something that it would have been helpful to know before, because it maybe wouldn't have been such a surprise when I realised what was happening.
Yeah,
It would have been something, yeah, that I was kind of more aware of. Um, so yeah, I think that's probably the biggie for me, is it's something that might happen. Maybe, I'm not saying it will, but it might be something that happens a bit sooner than you'd expect. And other than that, um, I don't know. Yeah, probably it might not be as bad as you were expecting as well, because as I say, my mum she'd had quite a difficult time, and I suppose if I'd really thought about it, I would expect it to have been the same for me. And again, I think I maybe had a period about 6 months ago, so I'm definitely not at the point where you can say everything's going to settle down or anything like that. So there could definitely be changes and different symptoms and things to come. But so far, it's actually not been that bad, to be honest with
Mhm.
you. It's not really, I don't think it's anything to be overly worried about, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's just a natural phase we're all
Yeah.
going to go through. And like you said, some people are going to have it a little bit more severe than others,
Hmm.
and it's perfectly fine. And there is support for those.
Definitely.
Amazing. Well, it's been amazing speaking to you, Maureen. That kind of comes to the end of our interview. So thank you very much for joining me today, and we'll speak again soon.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right.